Yes, sir. Call to order the regularly scheduled board meeting for USD 464 for November 13th. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
I second it.
All in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried unanimously. We will open a public hearing to address board policy JBCC, which is around our open enrollment policy, and are open to public comment and potentially questions from the board for Mr. Witt. So is there any public comment? Okay. Any questions from the board for Mr. Witt relative to open enrollment?
We just made the final, there were some minor tweaks, but that was it.
Yeah.
Same as what we had before.
And the plan is still to do the formal approval in December?
Yes, that is the next step.
Okay.
We've been getting direction, once again, from both ESDAC, Greenbush, area schools. We feel that we're on a good course for where we're headed, but every school district will be analyzing their own process, but that actually comes later.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so I know we've spoken about this a little bit, but the next step will be, determining whether we have room for out-of-district students or not, determining what our enrollment can be next year, but that'll be a process in March and April for us to finalize. So that'll be next step after formal approval of the policy in December.
Okay.
So
I hate to cut anybody short, but I don't see any public comment, so if there's no other comments, we can adjourn the hearing on JBCC.
okay, thank you guys.
Move into our presentations. Cody, you were first on the list, but since we just hit on it, is there anything else for JBCC? Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, presentation 3.2, Brandy Taylor, School Improvement Services.
We'll maybe. There.
Yeah, okay.
Magic.
Come on, magic. Okay. Hello, everyone, again. It's me, Brandy Taylor. I am your Director of School Improvement Services, here also representing the instructional coaches at the elementary school, but I am still at the buildings for middle school and high school, so I'm just here to give you a little bit of an update about what's been happening with me and the instructional coaches from August up until this point. We did send out a survey to staff 2 weeks ago at this point, 2 Mondays ago, and got some preliminary results back. We've got about 50 teachers that responded. We sent it out again today to try to get a few more voices on the survey. Kind of did a last chance, please respond. So I've gotten a few more today, but I didn't have a chance to implement them into the presentation. But as we get more, I can continue to update you through the document that Tanya puts together as well. It was a really short survey. I don't like to take a lot of time from teachers, but I think it does give us a pretty good picture. So this is the makeup of the elementary respondents. If you are a SPED teacher, then I did not count you in the makeup of our respondents because we are separate. They actually have a specific SPED coach. I don't know, do I need to be speaking into this microphone?
Probably for the people at home, yes.
For the people at home. So the SPED coach is not part of our initiative, so we didn't include that data. We do have plenty of comments, though, from our elementary teachers who would like to have some of the same things that are offered from us that they would like to hear from their SPED coach as well. So I will be meeting with our director of SPED, actually the assistant director of SPED, this week, so that we can share those comments with them and maybe connect a couple of dots there. So those individuals were left out, but we do have the electives and specials and then core content at the elementary responding. And then the makeup at the secondary is the same thing. We pulled out the SPED teachers, and then it is mostly core content as well as a number of electives and specials teachers. So really broadly, we asked, has an instructional coach been in your room? Are we being present in your building? At the elementary, those 19% right there, that is the electives teachers. So we had PE teachers and art teachers respond to this that the instructional coaches have not yet been able to get to. When we talk with them about that, that's a definite goal that they have, but we have 20 brand new teachers to the building this year, in addition to a lot of the teachers that came new last year. So they're working with a lot of first and second year teachers this year, which between the two of them, it's a struggle to get to where they need to be for all of those individuals. So we are trying to kind of focus in on those teachers that are brand new to the district and in their first and second year teaching. So that accounts for that 19% no. If you go back and look at the 19% no, though, you can see that it is electives and specials teachers at the elementary. At the secondary level, this is high school and middle school, and it is 100% that responded to the survey that I have been in their classrooms for observations, for walkthroughs, or visits. So these are the pieces that they shared with us that they had received from us that they felt was helpful. So we do offer a monthly newsletter at both the secondary and elementary levels. We offer PD during team time or PLC time at the secondary level. We've been giving PD bites, basically, so really pared down pieces, but part of our initiative. So we did our learning intentions and success criteria. We went into formatives. At the high school, I did some note-taking strategies. We have been doing just kind of a build up in a lot of the Hattie's high impact instructional strategies that I mentioned at the beginning of the year. I don't know if you guys remember, but those were those 13 pieces that we were targeting. And so we are just really once a month, we're kind of moving into the PD for PLCs and team time and trying to share that little information with them. We have not put out any mandates. We're not requesting that they're doing anything in those PDs. We are just offering them information. We are backing it with the research. We're giving them strategies that they can implement right there, basically walk into the classroom the next day, either use as team builders or as content. And so those individuals, they responded. I think that that's the piece that most are finding most valuable in conversations, and then the data from the survey as well shows that they really like us being able to go in, dedicate time to them so that they are getting some professional development during their day. We do chat often with quite a few of our teachers, just conversations in the hall. Them just being able to find the instructional coaches at the elementary school has been very valuable. Feedback provided from our walkthroughs, we continue to leave little positive notes. We have not yet moved into 2 glows and a grow, which is something that Greenbush is kind of pushing us toward. We will get there, and something that we have continued to talk with them about is that we wanted to do this with a soft approach, and especially because I am new to the district as well as one of my instructional coaches, we really wanted to make sure that we have built a relationship before we are putting into text something that might be taken a different way. I don't know if you guys have ever received a text message or something in an email where you are taken aback just because there's no context with that, right? And so I want to make sure that they know me before I might be asking them a question that kind of makes them sit and think, because some of those questions do sit and make you think about something that maybe you've been married to for a long time. So we're kind of taking it pretty slow with our questioning, but we have continued to give glows and just really hitting the positive reinforcement first, saying, you know, I love you're using proximity. This is what I'm seeing in your classroom. Just continuing to give those positive notes. The website is officially up and running. It is about ready to get an analytics piece on it, because we have, you can see here, there's less than 10 people that are visiting our website regularly, but I think that it's more than that just in conversations that I have with people, and especially when I'm asking, or when people are asking me about little pieces from it. So maybe it's just in the respondents, but I want to get the analytics piece so that I can also bring that piece of data to you guys as well. And then we also work with individuals on goal setting. All of our new teachers met with us and set goals, and then we have regular meetings with our new teachers on their goals that they set at the beginning of the year. at the elementary and at the secondary levels. If you were a first-year teacher, we were meeting with you. We were talking about what you wanted to see this year in your classroom and what things that we could do to help you get there. This is my data from my classroom visits and walkthroughs. I had been keeping basically a calendar of any visits that I've made into classrooms. You can see the data from August and October is pretty comparable just because of days in the classroom. October, I had an entire week out for the Dr. Jim Knight instructional coaching training that was in Lawrence, Kansas. I went to that for 5 days, and then parent-teacher conferences kind of also threw a ratchet in trying to get out and see classrooms. So I did 95 visits in September and about 55 and like something like 41, I believe, in October. I was able to do for 178 visits for the classrooms at the secondary level. When talking with the elementary coaches, they have about the same numbers. They said that they didn't have the exact data, but they're going by week, and theirs averaged out to about 175 as well. So between the three of us, we're not quite at 600. We're right around 5 something, but we are trying to continue to up that, and we hope to be around 800 by December, or the end of December. What else? So I very briefly talked about the Dr. Jim Knight's professional development on instructional coaching. We also have continued training for instructional coaching through Greenbush that the three of us are in, and then also some continued training from leadership development with Greenbush as well. Other initiatives that I have kind of started to put my hands in, we are talking a lot about teacher retention, especially with instructional coaching, and that is a really big part of our job, I think, is making sure that the teachers feel supported. We left space at the end of our survey for teachers to kind of give us a little bit of feedback about what they needed from us, and a lot of the teachers responded that they were so happy that we were here. Like, you can hear the first year teachers saying loud and clear, "Thank goodness you were here. Those first weeks were really tough. Thank you for being here for parent-teacher conferences. I didn't know how to have that conversation." Like, very specific conversations that they must have had that they feel like helped them to feel like they are in a good place here in the district. I'm also looking into title reading and math at the elementary level. That would be our Tier 2 and Tier 3 intervention programs. And then I'm also looking at the Tier 2 and Tier 3 intervention at the middle school level. So at grades 6, 7, and 8, we call it Math Lab. And I'm taking a deep dive into the resources, the time, the fluidity of that model, a lot of the goal setting and other pieces. How are they put into that? Are these our bubble kids? Are these the kids that are specific to certain pieces of need in the reading or math, or how did they get there, basically? Those are the pieces that I'm looking at. Culture, we have a big hand in culture, specifically at the elementary school. They are really working to really up the culture at the elementary school and doing a lot of things that really just bring teachers together. I think the best one that they do is the New Teacher Thursday. They wanted to do New Teacher Tuesday, just alliteration is always better for everyone, but New Teacher Thursday is what it ended up being, and it's just they continue to have a topic every week where they are helping to basically push out a tiny little bit of professional development. They give snacks, and they really do work with a small number of teachers, but it's those teachers that are showing up that want that assistance and that help. Like this week is increasing engagement in their CKLA, which is the new curriculum that was adopted at the elementary level. And so they are working with the instructional coaches just after school. They're not on the clock, but they are there with the instructional coaches, working elbow to elbow, trying to figure out a way to up the engagement in their classroom at the Tier 1 level. I'm also in letters training as well as the instructional coaches, so I'm taking it from the administrator perspective so that I can kind of have those conversations with admin. And then they are taking it at the teacher level. So they are in the exact same boat as a lot of our teachers at the elementary school. So they are able to support our teachers in all of the pieces from letters and how that implements into CKLA and the different ways that they can support them with that. We are currently looking at the High Impact Instruction. It's a book that we got when we were at Dr. Jim Knight's training, and we are looking at that. We're planning to finish reading that before winter break begins, and we want to push out basically the big takeaways from there. We want to do the reading, we want to do some of that groundwork, a little bit of background research, and kind of push those pieces out to admin so that they are not being forced to read the book. It's a huge book, fantastic, but we don't want them to have to read every single page front to back unless they want to. We really do want everybody to be on the same page with the message from that book and the messaging for teachers on high impact instruction. I'm working with the middle school care team, trying to really dive into those pieces that, for instance, the school psychologist would need in order to do a SPED evaluation, looking at the pieces at the tier 2 and tier 3 level that we already have in place, places that we might actually need to kind of fill in some of these holes when we're looking at what are the things that we need when we're looking at a student who is struggling. Do we have those things in place, or are we checking boxes? And so we're taking a really deep dive into that to try to make sure that that is a smooth process so that next year Mr. Schooley can sit down and say, okay, I need the data from this. Thank you. I need the data from this. And those meetings can sail right along as opposed to trying to have to do the testing that would be required otherwise. I am looking at how we are doing textbook adoption. I am sitting in at the math textbook adoption for elementary and secondary just so that I can figure out what that looks like. And also I'm trying to figure out if that's the area that we're going to find our intervention resource from, or if I am going to continue to go outside of the box, which is what I did when I was an interventionist at the 2 previous districts that I was in, where you just kind of find what you can and it meets that need and you make it work. That's the way that I've been operating as an interventionist, but wouldn't it be nice if we could find something that gives what we need to the teachers as opposed to them having to mine for it in what we call Google. And then I am working really hard to be that common thread that kind of connects the district and the overarching theme of everything that we are doing this year. And then trying to connect that with our elementary through our IACs there, and then through our secondary via me in the classroom at the middle school and the high school level. I believe that is everything that I have, unless you guys have any questions for me.
I just have a quick one. So you said that you did track the class, like the number of classrooms that you went into.
Mm-hmm.
Are you tracking any information that you're gaining from those classrooms? And are all of you doing that, I guess, as well?
Yeah, we also have that walkthrough tool. I don't know if you remember it. I talked about it at the very beginning of the year. It has 14 different constructs on it, and so we are continuing to regularly sample classrooms. So even if I go into 6 classes a day, I might not do the walkthrough tool for all 6. I will try to make sure that I am doing at least 2 core and then 1 elective. At the elementary, they are trying to do at least 2 a day on that tool, just so that we're having a regular influx of data, that we're not just saying, oh no, we need to get some data and it's December, it's almost the end. I want a clear picture so that we are seeing what it looks like in real time all the time. So we are collecting data there, and that really informs our PD and ideas that we have for things that we need to push out on the website or our newsletters or other pieces that we might have for the teachers.
And that was kind of what I was leading to. Then you have a better idea of what you actually need to provide teachers with.
Yeah.
I thought you said that they weren't tracking the number. I thought you said
they said that they're like doing a tally, so they weren't writing down names like I was. So they were able to average things out, but they aren't able to give me like specific data. And they are in the classroom with the tool as well. They just don't use it as often, probably because they have not had that ability, if I'm being frank. But yeah, they are also tracking data at the elementary. Between the 2 of them, they're probably equal to my numbers.
Do you find validity in like having exact names and information rather than just tallies?
For me, because I'm between 2 buildings, I'm trying to keep my head straight as to which areas that I've been in and where I need to go next. So I saw all the math teachers, or I saw half the English department. I'm trying to keep track of that for myself more than anything. That's the reason that I like the names. I think they're doing it because they feel like their office space is more of a communal area, and they don't want something to be written down where someone could come in and see they've been working with such and such for so many days. And that, I totally understand that, and I can agree that that makes sense for them.
So I think the first step obviously is engagement. It looks like you've done that, but I am interested, when do you think we'll have the first readout in terms of improved academic achievement or not? And I ask that not because I expect that, you know, you don't snap your fingers and say, we hired you and now therefore it happens, but do we think, is it 1 month or 6 months or 1 year? Because I do think, you know, we're gonna have, my assumption is you're gonna ask the board for more instructional coaches. That was always kind of one of the things. And I think I need to understand what progress we've made to justify that. And again, I'm not saying that you snap your fingers and it happens, I get that. But I think we ought to have some understanding for how quickly we'll see those results in academic achievement, and frankly, what kind of data we should expect. Because again, I know that's gonna be an ask, and I have to be able to understand whether we're marching towards what we expected to.
I don't think that there is any way to track specifically like how instructional coaching is impacting how we're doing as a district. However, I would hope to see improved everything, you know, tomorrow. That's what I would hope. I will say that it is we're going slow to go fast is the way that I would say it. The rollout of high impact instructional practices, like that's a really big shift for a lot of people to say, okay, I have been doing all of these things, and according to John Hattie, I have been doing something that's not great for kids. And so making that shift as a veteran or as a new teacher is a difficult thing to do, to leave things behind. Working with instructional coaches, if I'm focusing on one goal for one teacher, that is 6 weeks. It's a pretty extensive process, but the progress, I don't know exactly how you would measure it, except for to say, hey, teachers, are you finding value in instructional coaching? In terms of school improvement, though, with all of these things that we are starting to implement, I would say that when we start to see that 80% mark that I talked about at that very first meeting, that's when I hope to see real change happening. I can't say that it would be at the end of this year. I can't say that it would be at the end of next year, but I would hope that by the time we have instructional coaches who are embedded in our schools, where people are able to access them, where they are continued to support first, second, third year teachers, where those veteran teachers are now comfortable going to them and saying, okay, I need to know a better way to get my math students answering these questions. That's when we're gonna start to see it, and that's gonna take time. I don't know, I can't say without feeling like I'm making something up that there would be anything, but it's gonna be when teachers are embracing us, and when we've continued to reinforce and support them with all of the high impact instructional strategies. It's gonna be a really big shift. That data from that walkthrough tool, that kind of shows me that we're still at about a 50% mark when I say what's going on in the classroom. Is it a high impact instructional strategy, or is it something else? And we're at about 50% right now with walkthroughs with that. So
I think the other thing too.
Where did it start at? You said 50% now. What was your first pass?
the very first pass wasn't too far away from that. It was right at 40 when I was first doing it, and that was like the look in August, September, right when I looked at it, like the first or second week of September. With that first piece of data.
Is it fair to say that when the buildings begin meeting their academic goals, then we would also be able to contribute that success to not only the teachers and administration, but also to the instructional coaches? Is that a way to identify whether or not it's been successful or not?
Or tracking the trend towards that?
Right.
Yep, I would hope so. I can't, like I said, I can't say. And this is the first district that I've ever been in where instructional coaching hadn't already existed for the past 15 years, 20 years. So you
can also probably track who's utilizing the instructional coaches and what's the increase in
Growth.
success for the students too. You might be able to also
I
track that.
think
Right.
we can begin to, continue to track retention, right? So
Yeah, that's
the
exactly what I was
support
gonna say.
should help with retention, but I would suggest, and maybe this is as much for Lauren and Tanya, even if we don't have the data right now to say, you know, we moved from X to Y, if we could at least understand what the data elements are and begin to understand what we should expect to see at some point in the future, I think it'll fast track some of these things. Plus, I think it'll, if we have broad alignment on what those data elements are, it probably would be instructive for you in terms of how we might view success. So,
I think broadly it would probably be access to the instructional coaches. I think that it would probably be academic achievement, and I think that it would probably be teacher retention. If I'm going broadly, I would say that those three pieces
yeah.
would inform it.
And then I think, you know, academic achievement can mean a lot of different things, so we probably ought to just get real specific on, you know, is that MAP scores? What is it? I don't know. But again, I think those are the questions that we really need to answer, at least in my mind, before we talk about, you know, lots more instructional coaches. But that's just
Yeah.
one opinion.
The thing I am thinking about is like, okay, if it's 40%, 50% as that's going, it's like those classrooms that are doing the high impact, how are they growing? Because there's always predictive numbers. Are they meeting their growth goals? And how does that compare to those who aren't yet doing high impact, as far as being able to say, okay, we are gaining confidence that the techniques supported by data are having the same result here. And therefore, by increasing that, we can logically assume that the growth and that those improvements will just increase. Does that make sense?
Except for we measure growth, like, are you talking about MAP growth?
Yeah.
So
Because that's the only growth that I know of as far from a testing standpoint.
right, and so that's not all content areas, so
Yeah.
I don't know how we would measure it across the board.
Well,
I
maybe
think
you don't
warrants
need it
additional
across the board.
discussion.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we need to spend some time thinking about how we measure it. Whether that's the right measure or not, there has to be some
Or
measure.
one of them.
How do
Yeah.
other districts measure it?
I mean, we can talk to people like
Yeah.
Marner. I mean, that's
Yeah.
one of our,
Programs that have been going on a little longer. I would also like to hear from programs that have kind of just started it, very similar to us, and see where they're at. We have a lot more schools right now talking to us,
Like
and I would
Eudora
like to,
just began. I know they just started.
that are maybe a couple of years ahead of us. I would be interested in seeing what their data is looking like.
I mean, I think you're gonna have a hard time having immediate academics success, particularly if you've understaffed the position to begin with.
Yep.
So, I mean, retention and teacher acceptance seems to be pretty high on my list of things that would point to an openness, I guess, that it's, but I mean, true academic success, I just think that's gonna take a little.
That's more of the result. It's more of like doing the right teaching, the high impact teaching things, and has that growing, and then that's an investment over the long term that then the academics you just have to trust will follow.
yeah.
Yep.
One of the things that I know we're struggling with is, you know, I don't know if there was like, what, 162 different techniques that were on that long page, or the page and a half,
320.
320? Okay. But one of the things that we're struggling with, and I think a lot of families are, is there's a significant shortage of medication right now. And I have 2 kids that their grades have dropped like rocks because we can't get ADHD medication. We can't get any of that. And it started about a month or 2 ago. And it's a struggle because kids that were doing straight A's before are now getting D's and F's and aren't eligible for athletics anymore. And, you know, I don't know if there is different techniques or something like that to deal with behavioral things like that, or how to handle, because I think a lot of families, especially in the elementary school, are going through that right now. And you really feel helpless because there was such improvement for years, and now all of a sudden you just can't find the medication at all. So I'm just voicing that as a parent, like if there's opportunities to, you know, engage those students. I'm not saying that can overcome it, but to help, you know what I mean?
Yep, engagement's a pretty high piece of that, definitely.
Yeah.
And putting a kid on a computer is definitely not the direction that we need to go, especially when we have students with needs like that.
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions?
I have a question about, so math textbook adoption, isn't that something that you typically do? So then now do you work together on that, or is that?
Yeah,
how
I'm
is
kind of
that-
learning from her. I've never been involved in a textbook adoption. I've never been at a district that has that I've been there long enough to have them adopt textbooks. I've been passed over as a social studies teacher. I got passed over and over again as a social studies teacher when I was in ELA. We got passed over as well. So this will be my first textbook adoption.
Right, so it's just something that you used to do that we're switching roles, is that how?
Oh, no, I just wanted to learn the process of it, and since I'm involved with the tier 2 and tier 3, I want to make sure that the intervention materials may or may not be viable as that as well for that piece.
Yeah. Brandy and Tanya meet weekly.
Yes.
And so, yeah, there's a lot of growth, mentoring going on between them, and
Yep.
Brandy's wants to learn.
Yep.
So, yeah, that's
And the
really,
instructional coaches are involved too in,
Yeah.
in the textbook adoption.
Yeah,
So
'cause
they've,
they're-
they've been vital to that process.
Yep. Even provided PD for it,
Yes.
which was interesting for an adoption committee. We got some professional development.
Are there ever kids involved in that process?
Not typically. Usually it's a teacher. There are several teacher representatives. At the secondary level, we have all math teachers who are involved in the math textbook adoption. And at the elementary level, it's 2 teachers from each grade level. We have the instructional coaches, and then we always have at least one administrator involved too.
They are indirectly involved because if a teacher pilots it, then the kids are indirectly involved in, like they get feedback from
Yeah.
the students.
good point.
And the teachers last year in our ELA adoption got a lot of feedback from students. You know, they would have the items sitting out in their room and they would test out a lesson or look through some materials, and the kids gave a lot of feedback on what they liked and what they didn't like, especially at our 4th grade and up.
Okay. Thank you, Brandy.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Brandy.
guys.
Thank you.
All right, 3.3, Jill.
Bill, is that where we're at?
Yeah.
Okay. Right. I'm gonna kind of introduce this, if that's okay. I put a lot of information out for Jill. She was on jury duty last week, so I kind of built her presentation here. And so we met today,
Yeah.
actually, to go over all this. And so there's a little bit of, it's just a lot of information. So there's no action item tonight. That's, I think, the whole point here. But I had Jill share bus driver shortages, vehicle list by years, status, letters to families that were put out by the communications director, some bids on various buses that we have talked about over the last 2 months. So, it looks a little bit all over the place, but there's a plan.
Yes.
So just
Yes.
trying to help Jill out here a little bit because it
Thank
looks
you.
like a lot of information. So I'm
Yes.
sorry, Jill.
That's okay. No. So I assume you all got kind of my overview of kind of where we are in transportation with routing and our fleet.
Is that the bus driver shortage? Your families? Which one are you talking about?
Oh no, I'm not talking about the communications. I'm just talking about the narrative that you had asked me to write up. I thought that went out.
It's the 3rd one on the top. Bus
Okay, the bus
vehicle
fire.
status.
Okay, I just,
Okay.
yeah, okay. I just
Thank
wanted-
you.
Gotcha. Now I'm there.
Just kind of the overview of where we are. We're using, I said all 77 passengers. I was wrong on that. We have one route that's using a 65, and it's getting along just fine with that. And then our wheelchair buses, we have three wheelchair buses, but all of those only hold 2. That's the maximum. We have several students who have wheelchair needs, so I see that as a need in the future for needing more wheelchair capacity in a bus. We are sending 2 buses to locations. If we had more capacity in a single bus, then that would eliminate the need for an extra driver. And then just the overall need for the bigger buses. We, through our research, and even, well, let me back up. Since I've put this out and I said our 77 passenger would be, the delivery date was January, that has since changed. It's already been pushed back to March. And with our last bus that we had delivered, it would get pushed back, and then it would get pushed back. And so we're just kind of at their mercy.
And this is the last one that was approved, you're saying, Jill?
The last one that was, no,
The
not
one
the
with their
last
big-
one that was approved. This one would have been approved,
So there's two that have been approved, neither
Yes.
have been delivered.
right.
The earlier one's the one you were referring to.
Yes, yes. The last one that was approved was the one that we got with the grant last year, and it has air conditioning. Those are both 77 passengers that we have on order that you guys have already approved.
And it's well over a year out.
That one will not be here until 2025. However, we do, through my contact at Midwest Bus, there are some 71 passenger buses that we could get that are used. They have low mileage. I believe that you have their bids here in front of you. The main difference is one has air conditioning, one does not. That's basically the difference in price. And these we could actually get on our lot within like 2, maybe 3 months, because they have these. They have them in their stock.
Jill,
Yes.
you said that they're used. I don't think they're used. Those 71s are brand new.
Oh yes, they must have been stock buses
Yes,
then.
yes,
I
they're stock
apologize.
buses,
Thank
but
you for pointing that
no,
out.
they're not
Yes.
used buses.
Yes, they are. They're 2024s. Thank you. So they are brand new. I did late this afternoon. You got those 2 quotes. I also received a quote today from same guy from Midwest Bus for a wheelchair accessible bus that would hold 3 wheelchairs. On the quote itself, on the passenger capacity, it says 18 plus 1, but it would actually, you can take out seats to make that a 3, but that would take away some of the passengers because you have to take out the seats. So it would change to a 9 plus 3. So, but those are the three quotes that you have in front of you.
And, I think to kind of help the board understand, Jill put out the list of all of our spare buses. We have a couple of the spares that are just about aged out, which,
Yes.
after so many years, you can't even put them on the road.
Right.
So we're just trying to stay ahead of the curve here, even though we have 2 buses on order. One's supposed to be here March, April,
Right.
another one 2025. We have an opportunity, and we have it built into the budget, to purchase maybe both, a 71 and the handicap bus this year, and have them within 2 to 3 months.
Correct.
That's kind of what we're looking
The
at.
ones on order, we don't pay for those until we get them, do we?
Right.
So really,
Correct.
we've approved these, but they haven't hit this
Right.
budget, but we could buy one.
It's just, we're just trying to stay ahead of the curve, and we're just not, you don't want to get into a situation where you don't have transportation, and we're,
Well,
Concern.
the 18 passenger one, you would make, that's the wheelchair situation where you could carry more, and then it would
Correct.
have one
Yes.
less driver, basically, to
Right.
be more efficient.
Correct. Yes.
But the 71, is that just to get one here because our others are aging out?
yes.
Or,
And the fact that we're using all 77 passenger daily for routes, if a bus or 2 needs to go in the shop, our spare buses are not 77 passenger.
okay.
So it's a concern. Now, if there's not an activity going out, essentially, we could use one of the activity buses that are 77.
But you're juggling,
Yes.
you're juggling a lot
Yes.
of stuff.
Yes,
What's the age out? Is it miles? Is it years?
Years.
it's years,
And what is it?
25.
25.
We have made, in the last 5 years, really big improvements on our fleet, which was a goal of the board. We've made great progress.
Yes, for sure.
And so we're pleased with that. I think the biggest thing now for Jill and for the entire school district is continue to recruit drivers. I mean,
Yes,
we
we
know
have one that we're training.
She's got one in training. It takes a little while to get them
Yeah, she
certified.
should be ready to go probably by the break.
Right, okay. And so we just keep recruiting. We're putting out, I think there was more information that went out today, even on bus drivers on social media, just trying to recruit and retain. And, you know, we're competitive pay-wise. We're competitive with activities. It's just shortage. I mean, it's just the general shortage in general that's going on across the country in bus drivers. I just saw today in the news where was the Olathe school districts are, what was it? It was big. It was a big news. They're doing something with their routes. I'm sorry.
Their start times.
Oh, yeah,
They're
they're
changing
moving-
their
yeah.
start times so the same driver can run multiple.
Yes, which is what we're already doing. Yeah. So, but the Olathe school district, which has a multitude of, opportunities for staffing, they're. You're right. It was different start times at different schools.
So on the shortage, what's it? So we know we've been short for a while, but how's that been trending? Is the number of short drivers holding steady? Is it getting worse? Is it getting better? I mean, long term, is it? Are we losing ground as we try to gain ground, or are we holding? and
We
or
have
recruit?
lost a couple. We're gaining another. Quite honestly, my concern is if you look at our drivers, many of them are retired. So my big question mark in my head is at the end of each year, like, how many are gonna retire, so that's all. It's always a constant concern for me. Like, even if we got fully staffed, I would still have that every year, wondering, how long some of them will continue to drive.
I mean, have we done a risk analysis on that to see worst case, like what kind of position that puts us in, or?
We are working, I wouldn't call it a risk analysis, but we're looking at, maybe it is, we're looking at all different possibilities of what we might have to do. We have double routes going on.
Mm-hmm.
We are looking, there's a possibility we may have to look at alternate schedules for
times.
like our buildings, like a lot of school districts are doing.
Mm-hmm.
A start time at the elementary is different than the start time at the high school, just so that we can get more buses out.
So
I think
that,
Baser
like
does
what
that.
they're doing,
Yeah,
they
and that's
can-
not too bad in the fact that you're not having the elementary kids riding with the middle
Right.
school and high school kids. So you're running like a high school, middle school route, then they go back out and they get all the elementary kids. And
Because honestly, we have more middle school or elementary students that ride the bus, right? Especially, we don't have as many high schoolers because a lot of them will start to drive and whatnot. So, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Something that we've talked
Yeah, I mean,
about.
we can, I think we really have to kind of plan that out, because I mean, it sounds like there's a lot of risk out there, and we've been trying really hard, but if we aren't gaining ground and there's a possibility we might lose down in the future, we better have a plan in place.
So Jill's been asked to take a hard look, over the next 2 months of what that's gonna look like, and she knows
Right.
that, so we feel like we're working on it.
It seems pretty straightforward like that to me, that the one air conditioner or the one we can make 3 wheelchair, that we oughta, if it's available, we oughta do what we can to try to get that. I mean, whether it's, worst case, it's capital funds, we could use the
Right.
leftover bond funds and we
Right.
could take care of that. We just would need to adjust our capital plan.
Mhm.
The other one, I can see reason for that one, but maybe that one we just have to discuss some more. But I assume you're talking about next month, maybe adding
Yes.
something to that agenda.
Yes, action item in December.
And then this is a little bit random, but as we talked, can we incent parents not to ride, like waive our fees and give up their, people complain. you pay a lot of fees to sign your kid into school. I mean, we have to pay bus drivers. We're struggling to get people. Maybe we waive their book fees and different things that people would bring their kid to school. And I mean, that doesn't help. We got problems on elementary with traffic already, but I don't know.
I think in my mind, any creative answer would be on the table when you're talking about the challenge that exists. So
I mean, I know we're legally obligated to offer busing to people over whatever the mile and a half, but I mean,
2.5.
And those fees add up. I mean, why not look at it?
I think any option when you can't hire them at any price.
Yeah.
I think you consider any option.
I have a question. So when our kids first started school a long time ago now, so I had signed them up for the bus, but then I drove them anyway. So we never used the bus, and I didn't. And then when I don't even know how it happened that I then let the transportation department let them know that they're not riding ever, and they informed me, well, that's a huge deal because we save those spots for them even if they're not riding. So I guess just given that whole story, are there parents like me who had no idea that just because I was reserving I didn't know I was reserving spots on the bus. I didn't think it through, I guess. I just signed them up. Oh yeah, they might ride the bus one day, but they never did. So
Well, that comes more into play with the families who are on pay to ride, because like your students live more than 2.5 miles from any of our buildings. So we would be required to provide for them transportation. But it does come more into play for the students who are under the 2.5 who are already paying, but people don't realize that we have to keep that spot open, whether they only ride to school or back from school. So that's why I think I addressed a little bit of that in here. If you were to look at a roster, you might see 80 names on there, and you're like, what is a 77 passenger bus? We never have anybody ride the same bus, every day, all the time, because of that. And like a lot of high school students, parents sign them up for the incentive of, well, if you get in trouble, you're taking the keys, or if it's an inclement weather day, we would rather put them on the bus than have them drive, kind of thing.
just in that thought process though, can you would it make sense to go through those and have a phone call with the parent and just say, this is how it works, we're short, are they ever going to ride the bus? Or just have that conversation, and then, or do they do do they have the names and then they check them off when they don't ride? I don't know, I'm just saying it might be.
I think any option's a good one.
They know, the bus drivers know.
The bus drivers will know your students. Like when I sub, they're like, I look at the directions and they're like, they have never ridden. They only ride in the afternoon. They only ride on Thursdays, that kind of thing. So I don't know those things, but the bus driver.
But to Kaya's
bus
point,
drivers do.
if that brother and sister that have never ridden, if we called that family and said, do you ever intend to have Johnny and Susie ride the bus? And they said no. We understand you're on a crunch. No. Does that free up other spots? Does that make the routes easier or not? I think that's Kaya's point. If you could know for certain that somebody wasn't going to be on the bus, and we've got a pretty tight-knit community, people know how tight bus driver situation is.
Right.
Would that move the needle?
It would help in the sense of roads that we only travel down for that family. Maybe we have to travel down that road only for them. That is where it would make a bigger difference. You know what I hope I
So I think,
saying that correctly.
I think any idea that relieves some pressure there is a good one at this point.
I think, compile a list
Yeah.
of all of these ideas and then start seeing which ones.
Just one sticks.
Yeah.
Well, one last question. So on the 71 passengers that are available now versus sounds like the 77 that would be your preference.
Well, it's the difference of 2 seats, basically, because they rate them at 3 to a seat. So a 71 If you had 2 more seats, that would be 6 more, so that's 77. So it's a difference of 2 seats.
Okay.
What we have found out is that 90% of the schools run 71 passengers. The 77 is not, it's a special order almost. We like 77s because you get
It-
more, a
it
few more
does give
kids
you-
on to try to alleviate. But
My only suggestion was gonna be, given that these are, 6-figure buses, should we go lease a couple of 71s and place the order for the 77s, even if we know it's gonna be 2 or 3, 4 years? Something to consider.
we just tried, the only thing I would throw out there for Jill is we tried to get out of the leasing business, 6 years ago because that was the path I inherited when I got here, and it took us a little while to get from underneath that, and owning your own is just,
Well,
A
and,
little bit-
and-
a
and
little better.
I guess my point is, whether it's a lease or you go buy a used one or whatever, but, I mean, we keep these a long time. The oldest ones on the list is 20 years old. I would hate to sign us up for 20 years worth of something that
right.
wasn't ultimately what we wish we'd have bought because we got in a pinch. So I think it's worth thinking about.
What is for a 77 passenger? I know with smaller kids, you probably are more likely to get 3 to a seat. You also have probably discipline, behavior type considerations that go along with something like that. But
Correct.
I mean, what's kind of the range of the actual utilization or capacity of a 77? I'm sure it's a range, but is it usually pushing up close to that, or is it somewhere in the it's usually about 2 to 3 2.5 kids a seat, and it ends up being X?
So I get this question a lot when people are doing field trips and they want to know how many buses they need to reserve. So if they're middle school and up, I say we do 2 to a seat. I say 2 to a seat is comfortable. So
Yeah.
that's 52.
Okay.
Now, obviously, like you said, elementary students, smaller students, you can get 3 on a seat.
But they get squirrely.
Yeah. But when you're doing a field trip and you've got teachers on there, they can help out with that.
Yeah.
On the bus routes, a little bit different.
Right.
I have a question about the vans.
Okay.
So it's on here,
Uh-huh.
that that sometimes the athletic teams take the vans, and that what does it say? Oh, that you possibly could use 2 more vans to the fleet, right?
Yeah.
That's what.
What it says there, one thing we were thinking about doing is 3 years ago, we gave technology one of, I think, van
2.
two.
Van 2.
And at that time, that was before the transits, we were still pretty readily available pre-COVID. You can't get the size transit we want right now. So we're thinking about taking that transit back into our inventory and just buying a small cargo van that runs all over in town. The technology uses it, the print center uses it, and then we could put a seat back in that one red van. That would help her a little bit for flexibility of use of vans for coaches and sped most often.
Right.
But we're still short.
Can
Yeah.
I ask Mitch? Can I ask you a question? So for athletics, if you're going to a girls' basketball game, would you rather have 2 vans or would you rather have a bus?
The vans are usually, it's kind of 50-50. The vans are nice because you can come and go when you want, but they're also, you have to drive them. So that piece of the puzzle sometimes where if we're just going to base or the vans are really nice, sometimes if we're going down to Blue Valley Southwest, it's nice to have a bus where I don't have to drive home after what has been a relatively long day. So there's a give and take. When we take long road trips, I like the vans, like really long, because I don't like being on the bus. But I think it's probably just a matter of opinion for who it is. I think most coaches, the honest answer, I think most coaches like the bus. They get on the bus, drops us off, picks us up, and alleviates some of the responsibility on a game night.
But if you're doing that, you gotta take 2 vans versus
Right.
1 bus.
Right.
There's very few activities that the vans can house the entire team. And
Right.
that's even like girl basketball this
to we're handcuffed by if we don't have drivers.
But,
It kind
yeah,
of
that's,
falls onto the, it falls onto the coaches, unfortunately.
Well, I was looking at that as.
Or you looking for a new, you
I-
looking for a part-time job?
No. Nobody
You're gonna
wants
be
to
available at the end of the year.
You'd get there really fast though.
So I had a question about what this spare bus looks like and why do we have so many? I see we have 10 of them. What do they, why do we have 10 spare buses?
we just get, when we get a new one, we get rid of an old one. That's just kind of been the process. We haven't ever, I mean, other than we probably got rid of 2 one year when we had the accident with the one bus. Otherwise, it's just kind of, we get one, we move one out. It's just, seems like a lot, and then it seems like everything goes down at the same time, and I'm like, we can't have another bus breakdown, you know, kind of thing.
I think, Chris, a little bit it is if you have 2 to 3 buses, you know, that are being repaired, and then you start throwing the activities where you have, you know, buses leave early. You know, they leave at like junior high, for example, middle school. They're leaving at 2:35, 2:40, and you got to have the extra buses.
I get that, I understand that, but 10 of anything spare to maintain is expensive.
Well, yeah. I mean,
I'm sorry, but it is.
Are you, okay, so of the 10 spare vehicles, how often are you moving those?
Well, actually, we have started a process where we have a driver that comes in every week and makes sure that everything is moved, because in talking with Red Fuel, he told us, like, it's not good for it to just sit until you need it.
Oh, yeah. I just,
are they
Yeah.
being used?
I don't mean
Oh.
moved like
Okay.
moved from one end of the parking lot to
We-
the other. I mean used. Like, are you using like I mean, I understand what Chris is saying, and
So right now, for instance, we have one spare bus that's being used for a route because his bus is in the shop. It happens frequently where it might just be for an afternoon route. It might be for a few days where maybe something's gone in for an oil change and it just didn't get done by route time, so we had to put them in a spare bus. Or it might be, you know, something's leaking and so it's out for a couple of days or something like that.
Have you ever had an instance where you had to use all 10 spare buses?
No.
How much? Where have you maxed out at?
I would say the most, I would go so far as to say 5.
5.
Well, 3 or 4 of these are about to, well, I guess,
Age up.
20 years old.
Right.
And we could reduce.
We could reduce.
I think it would be
I was
worth
just asking the question. I mean,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I maintain a fleet of vehicles and I don't
No, I get what you're
just
saying.
let them sit around to inventory.
I
Right.
think it would be it would be worth the analysis to say, what are they worth? Because a 2003 bus probably isn't worth very much.
Right.
And then what does it cost us to maintain said bus and insure
Yeah.
said bus? Because again, I think it's kind of conjecture without some numbers behind it.
I
A
can-
2003 bus probably has a value between $200 and $2,500. That's probably high end.
Yeah. I will say that we have,
What's the avoided cost of
No,
keeping it
no,
going?
no, I get it, exactly. I mean, I think exactly what he's saying. So it's something we need to look at.
with one of our buses that we took out of inventory, we actually had it down at Red Fuel, and he actually has used it numerous times for spare parts, which has really actually saved us from buying, you know, a brand new something, or, you know. So that has actually helped us. In fact,
But
we
again,
use the door off of.
If that's a thing, you can probably make them inoperable and stop paying insurance and other things on them too. So
Yeah, that's good.
I think it
We'll
warrants
talk.
more conversation.
No, we'll
I
talk.
don't think we're gonna
Absolutely.
unpack it tonight, so.
Okay.
We're just full of ideas.
You got that all written down.
I got it.
Any other questions for Jill?
No, but thanks for doing all this, because I know it's a lot of work with the turnover in bus drivers.
We felt it was important that the board heard, you know, what was going on, because there's a lot of, you know, talk in the community about, you know, they know that there's a lack of bus drivers. They know that there's double routes and longer time on the
Long
buses, and
routes.
there's rationale behind it. And the best thing could happen for us is more people
More
sign up to be
drivers.
bus drivers.
Yes.
So,
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks, Jill.
thank you, Jill.
Mitch.
Okay.
Full of more great news,
So obviously sent you some notes, and I just kind of wanted to open up tonight with how we got to this place we're in. Obviously, the desire right now is to contract some custodial work through a third-party company that, you know, we're not hiring our own people. In the last 2 months, I've lost our lead custodian at the elementary school and our lead custodian at the high school, just for whatever reason. And so with that happening, those are obviously a couple of our more high-end employees in that department, and both of them were actually more than high-end employees. They're both just really the type of people that cover up a lot of issues that we can have. So losing both those people in such a short span of time kind of sent us into a whirlwind as far as numbers go when we were already down. So what I did was I reached out to a lot of local districts, just on an email chain with a lot of guys that do what I do, and said, hey, what are you guys doing for this? Overwhelmingly, I got a response from one company with a lot of positive reviews and did not get any positive feedback from anybody else. So what that led us to do was meet with a company called ATS that provides this service of, you know, basically outsourced custodial work. Lauren and I kind of went down this road a couple years ago when we were hurting, and fiscally just didn't think it lined up to make the move at that point. We weren't quite in desperation mode. That being said, I think we're getting dangerously close to desperation mode. You know, you guys have the paperwork. I won't go through every note and bullet point I had, but a couple other things that I think are important to think about in this process is the conversation you just heard, the conversation about paras, the conversation about food service workers. We're genuinely hiring from the same pool of people in town to fill our bus drivers, to fill our custodians, to fill our paras, to fill our food service workers. And I view this as a way to say, okay, hey, we can eliminate one of those blocks. And maybe it is a person that Jill and I are fighting over that can drive a bus or be a custodian. And so I think that helps this a lot. Right now, we're just down people, and you can see that. I try to break it down from a square footage standpoint the best I could, just so we can put some numbers to it, and I'm not just up here asking for people. But, you know, the elementary school is just a different beast in general. It doesn't, you know, square footage wise, and the high school are pretty similar, but how they get cleaned and how they get maintained are two completely different things, just with the clientele that's in there. And I personally am just getting the sense that we're not meeting the need right now to clean the building and continue to keep it, you know, I don't want a 10-year-old building that's going to turn 10 next year. I don't want a 10-year-old building to look like a 30-year-old building because we aren't able to clean the floors and we aren't able to just do the things that an elementary, you know, putting 20 10-year-olds in a classroom do to a classroom on a day-to-day basis. So what you got in front of you is basically just a request for approval of the contracted price through ATS to bring in 5.5 custodians. And basically what that looks like is our people would still work days, and we'd still have our current custodians working the days with the kids in the building, and then the evening shift would really turn over to ATS and their people, and they'd come in and they do the same job that we do currently. They're very pro training their people, doing the things that we want done as a district, kind of meeting our standards. They just pretty much provide the people. And so they'd come in the evenings and do the nightly duties at the elementary school that allow us to take the 2 to 3 people we still have there and put them in our other buildings to kind of try to meet that need. You know, other things, I said we hired 1 custodian last year. We hired 1 in 2022. We hired 1 in 2021. We hired 2 in 2020. I can stand here and tell you I've hired every single applicant that has applied with the exception of 1. And for the most part, I think we've really only lost 1 pretty quick. So when I'm telling you we hired 1 last year, I hired the people that apply. And so the applicants are not there. And very similar to the conversation we just had regarding the bus drivers, what's the crisis moment of, how do we, at what point, I mean, I'm not trying to, but I stay and I clean bathrooms every once in a while, and the expectation of our people is going to start really hitting home with what we're asking our folks to do. And so I worry about the current people we have saying, I'm fed up with this. We need some help. So I'm happy to answer any questions regarding this, but it's something that I feel extreme sense of urgency about. The company that I'm proposing to you has come highly recommended from Bonner Springs, Piper, Shawnee Mission School District, Washburn Rural School District. They all had the same feedback, and so that's kind of what led us down this path.
I have a couple comments. So
Yeah.
I have experience with outsourced custodians in buildings. I am not impressed by, you lose control over what's happening, and it's always my opinion that if you can hire an outside company to bring in people, why couldn't we hire those same people to bring them in?
So
that means that maybe we have to look at increasing what we're paying the people. We may have to increase our scope of recruitment for the people that are in the buildings. The one thing that I do think would be beneficial for an outsourcing is when those custodians have to take a day off, or then a lot of times that responsibility falls on whoever's left in the building, where I do think you should have, just like you have sub teachers, you would have a sub that would come in and help clean that. But from my experience of outsourcing custodial staff, they're not really cleaning, even though they're cleaning.
There's definitely an element to that, and honestly, I've exhausted a lot of this. We've talked to other districts. Hey, when you increased your pay, how did that impact? And I know that's something Lauren and I are working on right now. But the feedback is usually it wasn't great. It didn't, bumping up from $11 an hour to $14 an hour didn't solve a lot of issues. What I'd say is kind of what I said. I think we're talking about a company that uses Indeed, uses I don't know, Monster.com, or whatever. When they go for applicants, they're using recruiting services. They're pulling from a larger footprint than we are, and again, they're not pulling against the bus drivers. They're not pulling against the other parts of this. I've thought the same thing. Like, why can't we just go out and expand our horizons on how we hire? But every district had very similar feedback. They said it takes 6 to 8 months to get the right people in place, and they said the first 6 to 8 months were a struggle, and every single one said after that they really got their stuff together, and it was really, really good. So that's, I'm leaning on that a little bit in this regard to answer that, but there are some other districts that have horror stories about it too. So I think it is, my impression is they work really hard to get you the right people. So
I mean, you're talking mainly the night crew, and then I guess they would just be seasonal during school year only.
No, so it is a good question. It ultimately works just like our people do. They would work as a night crew. They would work in the summer the same way our people work in the summer. They'd redo floors, furniture cleaning, everything. They basically just become an extension of the district. Their model is there is a manager for them that is our direct point of contact. So I don't have to deal with the 5 people in the building. I deal with the one person. We communicate our expectations. Whether it be teacher complaints, administrative complaints come through me to them, and they handle that sort of thing. But they take off the same 5 major holidays, and then in the summers over breaks, they are proactively meet before Thanksgiving break and Christmas break to say, okay, hey, what needs done in the buildings over these breaks, and they adjust their times and their schedules. And so the summer would look the same as if those are our people. They'd wax floors, they'd work days. They're extremely flexible in what they can do. So it basically just becomes an extension of what we already do, just kind of outsourced, I guess is the best way to put it.
So what is the pay, and what is the benefit package?
So for them,
custodial.
So they pay, they said it fluctuates based on the need.
I'm sorry, what do we pay?
What do we pay? I think we start at $11.75.
$11.75?
Yep.
Do we have benefits?
Yes.
Full benefits?
Yep. Yeah. And so basically what this turns into is we pay less with better benefits. They pay, so you're taking more cash home. Which
Is that dollar amount that's in this proposal,
Yeah.
is that just straight salary, or does that include the burden of benefits in there?
For the number I gave you for us,
Yes.
that includes the benefit number.
Okay.
So Audra worked up basically what we thought, roughly taking the average salary of every custodian we have in the district, plus what we pay through benefits and things like that. So,
Okay.
you know, it increases it a few thousand. So the company is paying more, less benefit. We're giving more benefits, but this is nothing more than my opinion, but I think most people in that realm are trying to make money. I don't think their capers are huge, you know.
So, obviously, this question kind of is about predicting the future.
Yep.
So, what would perfect look like a couple of years from now? Would a hybrid model like this be optimal? Would the job market get as such where we would bring those back in house? Like what would optimal be?
I mean, to define optimal to me is just making sure that we're meeting the need of the buildings. And so, you know, obviously there's a financial burden with any of that. Optimally, we'd have all the people in house, I think. The hybrid model, and they can come in, there's the potential, and I think this just complicates things a little bit. There's the potential to hire 2 of our people at night and have them bring in 3 people. I mean, they will do anything. And, you know, it may go so good, we may say, hey, go do the middle school too. I don't know. I think, I don't see the applicants coming in that are going to meet our need. If I was turning people away, or we were getting 5 to 6 applicants a year and they weren't working out, something like that, where we were having turnover, I would be a little less concerned. Whereas right now, we're not even having turnover. We're just not getting people. And again, I don't know how to gingerly say, I think we have a lot of veteran people, very similar to Jim, that could retire. You know, I've got 2 or 3 people that are the age that could retire tomorrow. And then it gets back to what's the emergency state then, other than me getting Lauren and Tanya mop bucket. So,
Well, I think, from my perspective, if we're in a crisis, it tells me that the kitchen help, the bus drivers, and the custodians are equally as important as the teachers in these buildings. Therefore, we ought to look at pay. That would be the first place I would start.
So we I've talked to a lot of people, superintendents and others that are in that business. We're in direct competition with people like Amazon, who we all know they advertise the $18 an hour, and you can look at restaurants. Most of our people are probably in that 12 to 13 range.
Yeah.
They don't, I mean, it was where they're at. When school districts such as Shawnee Mission and Blue Valley pay $17-18 an hour, they're not seeing a shift in the number of applicants. And I can't explain it, Chris, but there is just, the workforce is not there. They're not there for restaurants, they're not there for.
People go where the money's at.
Well, but, I mean, you're talking 18 to 20 bucks an hour?
But we don't-
That's a huge shift, you know.
Absolutely, but we don't have anybody.
Yeah. No, I
I think you have to look at what's comparable to if we're hiring an outside agency, how much more are we gonna have to spend?
well, he's got.
And then look at that compared to what we could actually give as a increase in pay or where we could be comfortably.
there's that analysis for sure, but then it turns into, okay, if we bump up our custodians, let's say we take them all to $16 an hour, and then that shortens the gap in the distance of the price from ATS to us. But what's it look like when you do that for every bus driver, for every food service worker, for every para? I mean, all our classified staff, I don't know. I mean, it's a deep dive for sure, and we've talked about it a little bit.
It's not going to get any better, guys.
No. I mean, I'll be honest with you. Baser, I talked to him, and he said they bumped over $14 an hour, and he's like, it hasn't helped a whole heck of a lot. I'm with you. I think the number 18, I think that number starts
That's
grabbing
what you
some
hear.
people's attention.
That's
But
the number.
That's what it's going to take.
But I mean, I think there's a lot of elements to, you know, whether it's paying for a kid's college or, you know, weekly pay or bonuses or incentives. I mean, there's a lot of ways to get super creative with it, but I think that turns into, you know, how much time does that take, and where we ended up if we're not there.
Do you have any staff members or bus drivers that pull double duty, that do custodial and drive the bus? None?
No.
It looks like the out is 30 days. So if it didn't work out or if the job market changed markedly, we kind of only got 30 days worth of on the hook.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I mean, I think I think this is a year commitment. I really do. I'm not going to tell you I don't. I think it's a year commitment to see if they can meet the need. And then, you know, at the end of the year, we may bump it up one, we may take it down one, we may bump it up a half. I mean, I think that's, I think they've offered to be super flexible in this regard. And again, I could see it going either way. I could see a flood of applicants, and I think Lauren and I have talked. I think ultimately the goal would be to keep it in-house. I think that's the safest, best way for us to protect our assets. But at the same time, if the market doesn't shift and things don't change, I could see a scenario where we say take over the middle school. And you know, the high school has offered a new challenge, and I think the goal for the high school is to show it off and be able to use it and allow people to use it, and more events mean more help. And I mean, it's just, even the events we have now, we have so few people, they're just working too much. And I fear that at some point that becomes too much on them. And you know, I'm here to advocate for my people too, and I think that's what I want you guys to understand is these people do work really, really hard, and like you said, they're an extremely important part of the district, and we are working them to death right now, and that's not a good thing. So
I have a few questions.
Sure.
So I have the numbers in
Yep.
front of me, and maybe it's in here and I missed it, but so if you have somebody on night shift, how many hours are they working versus what they categorize their shift? Is it the same?
Same, yeah.
Oh,
It's an
apples.
8-hour work day. I mean, it's just a true 40-hour work week.
Okay. And then also, I know when we put in different products, like I don't know where I was or if it was in here, whatever, but they were talking about how, like, whoever did the tile or the finish on the floor, whatever, then that company comes in and trains your people because that takes a special,
Sure.
you know, method. So then all of those different things, so do you also have to bring those people back in and retrain them, or do they already know because they've done that system before?
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
they take on the responsibility of, you know, we have VCT tile floors over there, so that's, you know, their professional model is they can do anything. They said we can send you people to mow the grass if you want to, sort of thing. And so, no, I don't think I don't think what we're talking about is all that complicated.
And so the proposal is night shift at all the buildings?
Just elementary.
Just elementary.
Yep.
Okay.
So that, you know, there's no blurred line there. They are coming in at 2 to 10:30, taking care of the same responsibilities in an evening shift that we would if we had the people.
Do you think there's any chance that there becomes a finger pointing situation where the contractor says the day crew didn't do X and the day crew says the night crew? I almost wonder if we'd be better off if we're going to do this, to give them an entire building, move those folks.
So there is an element of like just the day custodian being around, lunch, whatever. What that looks like is like literally as simple as a map and coloring these rooms, and these rooms red, saying this is what my day folks are doing.
No
the blue,
ambiguity
there won't be. The elementary school serves really well to do this with the way it's with the pods and everything. You know, like it doesn't complicate things in that regard. So no, there's not going to turn into a finger pointing. They're going to know their area, we're going to know ours, and they'll be, you know, held accountable for whatever area they are to not getting done.
Okay.
I mean, am I wrong, but there's not an action item tonight, correct?
There's not tonight. That's correct.
They won't have a supervisor on duty then during the time that they're working in the evening. Is that correct?
They will.
They would have a supervisor with them as
So
they're working?
their half is basically saying they take 4 hours of supervisorial. They supervise for 4 hours of their shift. So they're checking up, they're training, they're doing these things, and then they have 4 hours of actual okay, hey, you got to clean the 4th grade pod or whatever it is. So that supervisor is fully there, and then the model is built so they have time to be a night lead, same as we would have, and then the other half. And that's where we could, add, if we need to add a half or if we need to take off a half. I mean, they're just kind of how that person works changes some of that.
Okay, any other questions?
I mean, if you just look at the math, it's like the difference in price. It is more, but it's like that's 31%. You just take that difference and apply it to the people we already have, and that gets you up to 17, 18 right there.
But we don't have enough people.
But we don't have the people.
Well, I'm just saying that
It might attract people.
But can't we find someone to help us recruit people too? If they're using a recruitment service, why aren't we using something like that?
That's I mean, we're trying.
I don't know why you can't do both. I mean, you got 30 days notice that they require in the contract, and we shouldn't jockey them around too much. But why don't we do both? Why don't we see if we can't move the needle with salary or hourly and get some help to keep the buildings? I don't know why you can't do both.
Well, are they negotiable on their? I mean, have we taken a look at their contract terms?
Their negotiable is, based on their ability to hire, I guess, would be.
Well, I'm just thinking about, like, you talk about quality and what's your
Right.
ability and your rights as according to that contract, a service contract,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
So going through that to make sure that we feel like, well, number one, we really understand it.
Mm-hmm.
Number two is that it feels like it helps us to mitigate the risk,
Right.
from a quality standpoint. I think that would be,
Yeah.
we do that with all of our contracts.
Correct.
So,
it's
we
no
just
different
need
than
to
this.
dive into it and understand, because it sounds like it's not a long-term commitment, and you could reallocate resources that we do have to other areas and start to
Yeah.
get you through the pinch that you have right now.
Right. And that's, I don't, there's going to be a curve here. That's, I guess, my urgency is it's going to take them minimum 30 days to get this up and going. And that's not, with the holidays and everything else, it may be 60 days to get it up and going. So by the time we're even able to assess whether it was the way to go or not, I think is, again, I would be fully committing to this for a year. I guess that's probably what I'm asking. I don't want it in the.
You mean the rest of the school year or a 12
I'd
months?
say a calendar year.
Okay.
And if January is that day, then, but I mean, just again, full transparency, I would be looking to see how this worked for a year, just so we know, okay, hey, it didn't work, let's get rid of it, or it is an option if we are staffed and we ever need to go back to it, or whatever. I think letting it run its course is an important part of it too. So.
Absolutely, as you should.
I think that this isn't directly related to this project, but if you go down this path, I think that personally, I think before we would vote on this, that we should try to put into effect the process to review, so that we have a review process for all our contracts. So we talked about that with like staffing the substitutes, where we hire a company to do it, and then but we don't have a process that we go back and evaluate. Is this something we want to continue, right?
Well, I mean, in some ways I evaluate them, and like if you're talking about Morgan Hunter, for example.
Right.
Audra and I, we go through all those evaluations all the time. I mean, we get quarterly
Like all
reports.
the time, meaning?
Quarterly reports of success, fill rates. We know exactly where we're at. There's not a lot of competition for substitute teaching, with companies.
I think, don't want to speak for you, but more like a formal process. You guys are looking at it as
Mhm.
working, but it doesn't really get reported to us that this is doing what we said
Yeah.
at the beginning. We're paying this, and it's working, and it's cost
Yeah,
efficient.
I get that. Yeah.
I mean, I feel like I liked what Justin said in terms of we probably need to do this so we don't lose the people we got, but we need to look at, can we do something different to take this back over ourselves? And some of that may not materialize until we get, to budget season
Yeah.
next year,
Yeah.
because if we bump one group up, we're gonna have to bump the other group up, and we're gonna have to bump
Right.
the other, so there's
It's
there's a
substantial.
multiplier thing here.
Yeah, and like I said, I think this at least takes a block of people out of that equation for a short time. Now,
But we need to have like back to your point, if we sign this, like at the end of, if we vote on this in December and get it in place, like the end of the school year, we're gonna have, what are the metrics we're gonna measure success at on this, I guess?
My concern too is like if you have two different groups working in there, so you have our custodial staff and theirs, if they're gonna pay, if they're not paying the same rate to their staff that we're paying, then why wouldn't our staff just say, well, heck, I'm gonna join them?
So-
now we're even deeper because we just lost our staff to the.
they reference that.
And I think that happens quite
Yeah,
often.
they
actually.
reference that in a couple places where they said the staff jump. Now again, it turns
Yeah.
into what's your paycheck look like or what's your 401k look like, you know,
Or your insurance.
and that's what it is. And so there's a lot of people that just need a bigger paycheck and they could care less about
Are we
that
required to provide benefits?
for.
They don't have to take it, but it's.
But they don't get a bump in
There's
pay
no
if they do.
differential if they.
No, it's either use it or lose it. And it's a great, I mean, we've worked hard to get
Benefits, yeah.
get a benefit for all of our classified
Right, but
employees.
if it doesn't have value to them, but a bigger paycheck
I'd say that
does.
our people right now, I think, are still here because of the benefits.
Yeah.
So I think there's a
Yeah.
very distinct.
All I'm
pool
saying
of
is,
each.
is there a potential ability to give them that option to where they could then take home more?
The reason you wouldn't want to do that is because we are working hard to get the number of people involved in our insurances. Otherwise, we will take a huge, if we can't keep our high number of people using it, we will take a hit the following year because of lack of usage. And you just.
Well, I think you have to look at the whole picture. So I think you have to say, okay, what is that? If you're going to take a hit, what does that look like? And that plays into the overall equation. I don't want to dismiss it outright just because we think we're going to take a big hit when you don't have all the individual numbers to be able to pull it together and see what it actually looks like.
So I would make a suggestion that I think Mitch has pulled together a lot of really good data. We don't have an action item tonight. I think there's a few I's we gotta dot and T's we gotta cross, and we can do that between now and December. I would suggest that we move along.
Yeah.
Works for me.
Been a long day.
Suggesting.
You've put the information out
Yeah,
there, Mitch.
like I said, if you have any more questions,
They
I'm
needed
happy
to
to
hear
answer
all
them.
this. They had a lot of questions.
Yep.
The only,
There'll probably be more questions.
Yeah.
the only last question I would have, is this the only company that offers this service?
So the only one that I got positive feedback on.
Okay.
And just the last thing I'll say is this is not something, I don't think if the bid was $2,000 cheaper and we didn't have any reference point, that it'd be worth our time. When we're talking about full-time, putting people in our buildings to do, it's not just a concrete job or an electrical job. This is a full-time, something that I'm not comfortable with a company that we haven't had multiple positive references on.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where that's where we just kind of narrowed down here.
Are we required to compete it? And, I mean, references could definitely be a significant portion of the evaluation.
I will double check tomorrow with KSB. Mitch
We can throw
Mitch and
another
I will
number
meet.
at it.
Yeah.
So,
I think services, right, Tanya?
Yeah, service.
I don't think
I
services
mean, I
rendered
guess
like this
from
you do,
what
but I
remember,
want to make sure.
the stuff we
Yeah.
did before, but wouldn't
We
hurt
could
to
definitely
document that in the
maybe-
proposal.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll talk.
There was another document attached to this, is that
Is
right?
the contract.
Contract.
Huh?
The
Statement of
contract.
work contract.
I think that was the contract that was supposed to go on yours.
Yeah,
whatever.
it looks like it's in the wrong spot. It doesn't
It
look
is.
like
I
a
didn't give you
Mitch
anything
thing.
other than the Word document, so, because the contract.
Oh, is that for the RSP?
Just a
Yeah.
little
Okay.
bid, so.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Mitch.
Thank you.
All right. Entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move we approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Audrey, any public comments? No public comments. Moving on to 6.1, Mr. Colcamp.
Okay, so if you look at mine, I have several on here that are really pretty important. This is the first one, the possibility of a work session, and I keep bringing this up probably in my Friday reports and everywhere else. Tanya and I feel there's some urgency to try to just have some conversations as we plan for next year. I mean, that's really what we're looking at. There are several initiatives out there that we're taking a hard look at internally. We just need to share with you some of those. For example, you know, we're really looking hard at our early childhood development measures. You know, that's a big discussion item as far as expansion of that. We know school districts across Kansas are taking hard looks at their early childhood. That's where you make the difference early on for success as you go into kindergarten and first grade. So those are things that we're working on. Bus schedules and times, and there's what are some of the other ones that you have listed?
We're also looking at,
Escapes me right now.
I know.
So but those are just things, there's a lot of things that we just need to share with you at some point. And I know that, you know, maybe December is not best, or maybe we wait, until January. It's just, we feel some urgency because if we're trying to get things in place by August of 24, 25, we just need to get started. That's all. Okay, the demographic study, this is something that we have talked about internally. This is the same company that we went with 3 years ago. And it's RSP, and there is a contract that I have, and if we are to approve that tonight, which is an action item, then they can get started as early as February. So that would be an ideal time. So they've got us in the books for that. They're just waiting for a contract of approval. We know what we're getting. I didn't have them come in and give a spiel to you. I think we all on this board know, the information that we get. It's quality information. The last time we did it was during COVID, and we don't feel like we probably got the results that we are now seeing. I think that's pretty fair way to put it. So I think we'd like to take another hard look at it. So that is it's an action item. There's the cost of $9,000. The other one here is the KSB Board Policy Handbook. Maybe not as urgent, but this is something that I really feel I have it down as an action item because we would like to get moving on this at some point. I'll say this because Drew's leaving. He has been a huge help with these board policy handbook updates. You know how difficult they are. They are not fun to review, and so Karen's going to. But we were looking at I said the policy light, and actually the one I should have on there is that
Policy Plus is
Policy Plus. I'm sorry. And so do I have it's in there? It's the Policy Plus is included in the attachment.
Yeah.
So that's where
I wish we wouldn't call it the handbook update. It's really a review.
It is. But then after that, it is updating.
It's taking the recommendations and comments and choosing which things you're
Right.
going to incorporate if it's a good fit or
Now
not.
that's for the every 6 months.
Well, this is
More
this
than
is they'll do it in the same manner.
Yes,
They'll do a
yes.
comprehensive review, provide red lines, and then you
Mhm.
see if whether or not you want to incorporate it or not.
Right, and then, but the other side of this is the update is we actually haven't had a review of our policy for a number of years.
That's what I'm talking about here.
Yeah,
Is
yes.
that comprehensive review?
Yes, yeah. Okay. So I'm hoping that we can get this started tonight. I think it's important as we move forward into the next school year. I did visit with Greg on the SRO, got a little more clarification on that. We are actually in the last year of that contract. So we've already paid for year 5. The contract that Greg is proposing would actually not take place until January of 2025. They just need the information for budget, their year out budget. And so I think we're all in that situation where the current SRO we have is doing a very nice job, and we'd like to continue having an SRO, and I think that's kind of where we're at. So that's, once again, it's not an action item, it's just giving you an update that it's something that we're working on and we'll continue to work on. The UMC after-school program is on hold, as you know, and that's they know that it's on hold. I met with Drew and Calesta, was probably last Thursday, Drew? Friday. And the good suggestion is we need to look internally at our own policy. And so I didn't run off copies for everybody, but Drew has one, I have. This is our current facility use policy. I've also looked at other school districts that have, maybe a lot more in-depth policy on what the expectations are for outside groups coming in. So we're going to continue to look internally at that. And so that's just, we have some work to do on that policy. Is there anything else, Drew, you want to add to that? Okay. The Leavenworth County Superintendent's meeting, as you know, we've been meeting every other month on a legislative platform, and I did share that with everybody. I think I sent it out email, and this is just a hard copy. Just need your opinion on it. This is something that, as I mentioned in my Friday reports, KSDE, USA Kansas, KSSA, they're all asking the superintendents in Kansas to visit with their local politicians in a positive manner. And what we're trying to do in Leavenworth County is meet in Leavenworth, invite the 8 either state senators or representatives with a forum where we can just visit with them about a little Q&A back and forth, and they would know in advance exactly what we want to talk about. And so Wyandotte County, I shared Wyandotte's, they've been doing it for years over there. We just haven't. And so I know that the board in the past has asked me to be more vocal, about, for example, special education funding. Those are things that we need to talk about. And if we don't talk about it, it doesn't get talked about. So any thoughts on it?
I mean, I don't necessarily disagree with anything reading through it. I mean, I didn't go with a fine-tooth comb. I mean, I guess it seems like but it does say the Leavenworth schools, and I guess I kind of question it's more the superintendent's objectives for their schools than, I mean, if it's speaking for Tonganoxie schools, I personally feel like we have to vote on it. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I know that's not how it's all been done, but it just, I mean, it seems like it's hard for me to say, does it really reflect each district if they didn't vote on it? But, I mean, I don't want to bog down the process, but it's kind of, maybe that's semantics. But
What they were asking is for me to sign it, for me, the superintendent, to sign it with a school logo. Not they didn't really refer to the board, making an approval on it, which I get, Jim. I understand exactly where you're at. So I just, some direction. It's not meant to be controversial. It's meant to be very down the middle.
I think what he's saying is just the process
Yeah.
to make sure that something that.
who's issuing the statement?
Yes.
It's the superintendent group, and this is our priorities as a group.
What do you?
I think it'd be worth a call to KSB and understand. I don't personally have, everything in here is directly tied to mission, vision, goals of the district. So I don't think it's an issue to approve it. I think the question is, do we need to approve it? So
Okay.
it's probably worth a call to them.
I will do that, and I'll let you guys know ASAP. Okay, appreciate it. Want to just mention very quickly, we had our Veterans Day program on Thursday, November 9th, and we had not 230. We had quite a few veterans and families and community members there, plus the 600 and some plus students. And we handed out 8 quilts of valor. And then we also did a Lucas France tribute, which was very, very good. The music, once again, was outstanding by the band and choir. Becky Nazelrode was a huge help in helping me get this organized, so I really appreciated her help. But once again, I think the overall theme of this is it's really positive for the community to see our students in a very positive light. I mean, the kids were very respectful. We had Boy Scouts helping. We had I said the band and choir was phenomenal. It was just a very, very, very good hour-and-a-half program. So I'm glad we do it, and I think I really do believe the community of Tonganoxie appreciates it. I know that, so that's what I got.
Did you misspell Tonganoxie?
Yes. Yes, and quilts, I think.
Yes. I have a quick question on the demographic study.
Mhm.
I know it was bad timing the last time we did it, but is there another company? That company was really pretty off. Like their data was very off.
I will say they are the by far the most used by school districts across the state of Kansas. When I ask for recommendations, no one else comes up besides RSP. And I don't know. I mean, we had remember at that time we had a downside of enrollment. During COVID, we had.
Yeah, but they predicted that was going to last for what,
Yeah.
5 to 10 years.
I think that's where I'm curious now is where are we? I'd love to. I just want to use the same.
And I just
company.
remember them guaranteeing their data too. Like there was like a kind of a bit of a guarantee to that they had proven.
It's like Weatherman.
Yeah.
A little
But
bit.
I was kind of hoping for a little better than
Yeah.
the Weatherman.
But they are a very reputable company. I know
Okay.
They
that.
probably haven't worked through a pandemic before either.
Yeah, the timing wasn't the best.
Don't make excuses
Well,
for
back
them.
to the question though. So we've only that when you say, well, everyone recommends them, like all the school districts uses them. That's the same thing that we went through with the architects, where they said, right? That was the whole thing. Like we need to use. I won't name them, but and then we pushed the envelope a little bit, and we ended up with somebody else that we were happy with, right? So,
I just hate to spend another $9,000 to get bad results again, potentially. I
No,
hope
you
that's
don't.
not what's going to happen, but
This is my recommendation.
I think if you had two, I don't know. I guess I would like to try the same company again just because of their history with us and their past performance. And I think it's our normal planning process. Doing these studies is money well spent. It's hard for it to be perfect, but you can't do any kind of planning if you don't have expectations of what the numbers are
but
going
we
to be.
couldn't plan off the data that we were given last time.
Well, they said it was going to be flat. So, when we've grown, we have the capacity, and growing is good for our head count. I don't think we've grown massively. We went down, then we went up. I don't know if we have just really established a trend, so I don't know.
I just thought if there was another comparable company that maybe that would be something to try to see if we get better
I'm okay
results.
going with them a second time, but if it happens
I
again,
would
there'll
agree
be a third
wholeheartedly
that
with
this probably have to take a hard look.
I think the other thing, guys, this is more about, do you believe that they've got the right process? Because you're effectively asking them to predict the future. So I think you're buying into the process that they're taking you through, not the outcome necessarily. Because if they could pick the outcome, they'd go buy lottery tickets and they would be doing something different for a living. So I think you're buying into the process, not the outcome.
Well, the process over time will have some little now there is possibility that this was the one time out of 5 that they're off. I don't know.
I think Stephanie's question's fair in the
No,
respect that.
I do too.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, because you in this day and age, there's competitors for everything you do, and if there aren't, then we should all go in that business, right? So, asking what other competitors we've talked to and looked into is a fair question.
The thing that I think about is we've done a demographic study in a pandemic. Now we're asking a company to do a demographic study in a recession. I don't know.
It's always something.
Well, I think the questions will be into the process, like Justin said. I think it showed that we had very few. We were like an empty nester community and not many new births. And that data with some of the houses that have been added will be kind of interesting to see how that's shifted.
All right, we have it as an action item. Lauren, did you have anything else?
No, thank you.
Tanya?
All right, the Teaching and Learning Committee met and went over the courses that they are asking for approval for the 24-25 school year. There were 3 middle school courses, 6th grade beginner strength and conditioning, 7th grade intermediate strength and conditioning. We already have 8th grade. And asking for pre-algebra, which would allow for a higher level math at 7th grade to keep those students on track for 8th grade algebra. And then at the high school level, ceramics, this is a part of a progression in their art courses. So they already have intro to ceramics and they have advanced ceramics. They're just missing that middle level. There are 2 courses that are being proposed, fundamentals of gaming concepts and then advanced gaming concepts. This is more, I think they picked the name to attract students, but it's really more about learning about operating systems, building PCs, networking switches, cybersecurity. We've talked with Forrest about it also, and that is a field that's growing, that tech field. So this is very interesting to students, and that would be kind of an expansion of what we're already doing with our tech intern position that Forrest utilizes those students to work on computers. And then creative art, and the last 2, creative art and then the Chieftain community contribution, entrepreneurship, those are for our students in our CBR courses. And so those are our students in special education with our most significant needs. So this would be an elective art credit for those students. And then the piece about the entrepreneurship would be marketing, selling some things that they've made, learning how to be an entrepreneur. And those 2 courses are more about building their job-ready skills as they leave our high school. So those are the courses that the Teaching and Learning Committee had approved to recommend to the board. So you have those, and that's later in the agenda for your approval. Did you have any questions on the courses?
I assume we have staff members in place for these programs?
We do, yes. None of these courses were about adding staff members, so that was one thing that we look at. What I also tell the Teaching and Learning Committee before they make any recommendations is just because we have them for approval doesn't mean we automatically offer those as courses in the next school year. So they could be a part of the rotation, or they could be just approved and then added later. But we don't add any courses that are not approved. So we may offer, let's say, ceramics, and if we have no one interested in taking the course, then we don't offer that course. So it could be made available or it could not, just depending upon the rotation and the interest level.
So then also, is industrial arts a plan for the high school next year?
Yeah, we
They-
have
they
applicants.
I mean,
still
obviously
have
we gotta
that-
hire somebody, right?
They still have that position open, yes.
Okay.
We have applicants.
You do?
Mm-hmm. 2, maybe 3. 2 for
So if
sure.
you're not hiring new staff, then how are these being put into place? Like, what's leaving in place of that?
Not really anything is leaving. So your courses at your middle school, your 6th grade and 7th grade, the beginner and intermediate strength and conditioning, that's part of the PE rotation. And if students wanted more of a focus on that strength and conditioning piece, Coach Jones would take that crew. So we've got 3 PE teachers at the middle school. So it's how they divide it up now, but those students who are more interested in a strength and conditioning piece would go that route, and the other students would go a more traditional PE course.
At the same time?
Yes.
And so what about the gaming concepts one? What would be, that feels like be replacing something or changing.
It's not necessarily. At the high school, this year we added another business teacher. So we have 2 business teachers, and probably Cody and Kelly could speak more appropriately to this, but the way we allocate some of our courses, we've added at the middle school, we have our 8th grade technology, and then we also have an 8th grade business, which would have been STEM. Okay, so we had our STEM teacher leave, and then we replaced with a business teacher. So with those 2 courses, they are a couple of our introductory courses for that career tech ed pathway. Sometimes you can count an 8th grade class for your introductory. So by doing that, it freed up some of our business courses that normally would have counted as those introductory courses. And so we don't have to offer those pieces at the high school level anymore. So this opened up where we could plug in a couple of additional electives that would be a part of a pathway. So it just kind of freed up some people by adding those introductory at the 8th grade level. I don't know if that makes sense, but we shifted some things around. And for our CBR students, those are part of their skills that they're working on, a part of their IEPs. So,
Gaming concepts.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to have my 3 boys telling me that they got homework and playing Xbox at night.
No. Honestly, that's a tiny piece of it, because when they first came to me about this,
I got more
was
gaming
not
systems
like,
in my house than I
no.
got kids. And I got a lot of kids.
Well, but if your kids learned how to build those systems, like build the PCs, build the hardware, and to market those, I think that would be a very good.
Oh yeah, they got 2 of them broken down right now, soldering stuff in.
It is a fast-growing field, and it did get to me when they first came up to me with this concept. I said, we're not doing a gaming class.
It says gaming right in the
yes,
name of
it does. I think that's to attract some students to that,
or create a lot of disappointment when they get there.
Right. The tech field is a fast-growing field, and a lot of these things with cybersecurity and building networks, networking switches. Forrest can tell you, he talks about networking and switches all the time. Cybersecurity is huge, and so it's really a very small piece of it, I think, to attract students to take
November 13th, Tanya.
So
I
those are
think
the courses.
there's some prerequisites too. So
Yes.
a student's going to have to be committed to that, not just sign up for it on a whim someday.
Right. Any other questions about the courses? All right. We had our professional development session on November 10th. We had a lot of things going on that day. The elementary folks were involved in letters training, and we have 2 cohorts of those groups going on right now. The folks who started their letters training last year are in their year 2, so they participated in their year 2 training here. We had all of our new teachers, and then those who hadn't had letters last year, they are starting on that letters year 1 this year, and it is a 2-year process. The high school and the middle school participated in high impact instructional practices. This was more of the implementation. We've had a couple of days of training on that already, and this was a chance for the teachers to present to each other how they're implementing some of those high impact instructional practices, and then to help evaluate each other. We also had some training, more training on curriculum guides, IXL training at the secondary level. We talked about Kagan cooperative learning principles. Brandy was involved in that at the middle school. We worked on some interventions, and we had some vertical time with staff. And then I have an update for you on the strategic plan. We have been working on this, since March. So we had all of our forums, we did all of our surveys, and we walked through a lot of this. We had kind of a breakout for you last meeting with our draft mission, vision, motto, strategic goals, and then we are working on our SMART goals. So as part of this, KSDE is currently redesigning their KISA model, which is the accreditation model, and there's some significant changes to the model. So they are going through the process right now of getting that approved with the Kansas State Board of Education. So they are getting that approved at the December meeting with KSDE. They're going to roll that out and start training folks in January and February, and that new model is going to start next school year. So this year is the learning year or 0 year. So this is the perfect time for us to still be talking about our strategic plan, because ideally it really matches with what we're doing with KISA. Your strategic plan and your accreditation plan should be one and the same. So you're not, driving. I picture like a car with all 4 wheels going in the same direction. You shouldn't have wheels on a car trying to go off in different directions. We're all trying to go to the same place at the same time together. So in talking with our administrative team and Lauren and Becky, We really feel like we want to make this the best strategic plan that we can and hit this off on the right way. So get everything set in place, work on our publicity, everything that's going to go out with that, and have everything rolled out with a bang starting next school year. So we're going to continue to work on that and make sure everything is in alignment with the new KISA model, make sure all of that fits together, present the final strategic plan, our draft plan, to the board in like April, May, or even before that. And then the summer we would spend working on how we're going to roll that out to staff. And you know, what I really am excited about is when Brandy came on and we had a new administrative team come on for the elementary this summer, we started talking about, you know, what's our charge for the year, what's our theme, our mission. And we were kind of still in that process of, you know, putting together all this information for the strategic plan. And my excitement right now is that's going to be all one and the same. And we're all going to be heading the same direction at the same time. And we can put things together that roll things out to staff and community and the students. So we're all building that excitement together. And I'm just really excited about having the time and doing it the right way. And that's just what I wanted to share with you about that. So we'd begin the school year with a bang. I hope that makes sense.
Thank you. Questions for Tanya? Okay, let's move into action items. Action item 7.1, approval to move forward with the demographic study. I know we've had some discussion on that already. Certainly open to other discussion.
I would make a motion to approve item 7.1, the approval to move forward with the demographic study.
Second.
All those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 6-1. Action item 7.2, approval to move forward with KASB policy update service. Any?
Which one? I mean,
The,
what's your recommendation?
my recommendation would be the
Policy Plus?
The Policy Plus, option 2.
So from my perspective, I mean, I think the work that Drew's done historically to look at that is, has been a tremendous advantage for the district and also a tremendous time burden for him. You know, going forward, I think there's, and we're still not 100% up to date. Additionally, these guys have attorneys and are connected in with legislative updates. I think we're behind. And I would love to say, well, we just throw more effort at it, but I think it's going to take a focus to get us up to date on policies. I think the downside of not being up to date on policies could be pretty painful from a legal and liability perspective at some point too.
What's the comprehensive piece of it? I mean, I thank Drew a lot for doing that too. Those things are thick. But I mean, looking at the ongoing one is one thing. It's the cohesive time that everything together.
Yeah.
And if we have things, so I mean, I'd move we had approved the policy or policy plus option of action item 7.2.
Wait a second.
All those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you. All right, and action item 7.3, approval of new courses for the 2024-2025 school year. I'd move that we approve action item 7.3. Is there a second?
I second it.
All those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried unanimously. We do have executive session, so I would move that we adjourn to executive session for, what do you think we need for your part, 20 minutes?
15 to 20.
Why don't we adjourn into executive session for 25 minutes, 15 with Lauren and 10 with just the board, and take a 5-minute break before we start. Is that a second?
Second.
All those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Did you get all those numbers?
All right, we will call the meeting back to order. I think we do have one action item coming out of executive session. So I would move that we give the superintendent a one-time discretion to adjust some food service hourly wage. Do I have a second? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried unanimously. I think the only thing, I'm trying to get back in my computer here. What's next, Lauren?
Possible announcements.
Oh, possible announcements. I think the only thing here is, Lauren had mentioned a work session a couple of times. We have not gotten that scheduled. I will poll the board and see if we can find a time in December to do that. I need to work on my calendar for the next board meeting. There's a possibility I'll have to dial in, maybe talk Chris into running it, but I'll know here shortly. So, any other comments?
Did you want to say something about the teams? The football. Lauren, didn't you say something?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Sorry.
So, yeah, I do want to, commend our fall season. We're having a great year, with activities and not just athletics, but also across the board. Our volleyball season had a highly successful season, a great record, ran into Miege, and they went on to win state rather easily. So you got, figure that one out. Our football team this Friday night is playing in the first time forever in ever history, the state sub-state, which is the first in Tongi history. It's going to be, I know, a huge crowd Friday night and playing another private school. So that'll be fun. And then we want to commend, the cross-country team for third at state, which is the highest they've ever achieved in their illustrious history. And it just kind of keeps coming and coming. We've had some really, we just had our school play Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Very, very good. So just a lot of good things happening with activities. I don't even know it. I know our debate teams and everything else is really rocking and rolling. We've got good people, good sponsors, good kids working on all these things. So thank you, Kaya, for reminding, because I did want to say something. I didn't get it in my report. So yeah, they're doing great. It's been a really fun fall. Hope to see everybody there Friday night.
That was an important announcement. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, we are adjourned.